Thanks so much, Heather. Thanks for the warm welcome. And good day to everyone who's watching us live and also to anyone who joins us later. I'm really excited to share my expertise with you because, as Heather mentioned, I am passionate about helping people with their health, in particular in my area of expertise, helping people with their hearing health. And there's just so much information and unfortunately misinformation out there that I decided to put together this topic when we were talking about what I could share with the membership at the Unison. I thought, let's talk about hearing health. So we did that last time, and you can you'll have access to that link from their website. But I also wanted to talk about hearing aid myths because there are just so many, and I want to talk about them. I want to address them, tell you what's true, what's not true. As Heather alluded to, I've been a partner in the community of Unison, Kirby, for almost 20 years. And, you know, the information that I bring to you is trustworthy and objective and based on my many years of research and education. So before we start, I will let you know what my background is, so you know why it makes sense for you to listen to what I have to say. So I do have my doctorate in auditory science sorry, I'm just trying to, there we go. Yeah, so I have my doctorate in auditory science. I have a PhD in what we call auditory behavioral neuroscience. So essentially what that means is how the brain and hearing is linked and how that affects our day-to-day function of being able to hear, listen, and understand things. And so because of that, I've done a lot of research in how hearing loss can affect the brain in detrimental ways and what we can do to prevent that from happening. So that's who I am. I've trained at Georgetown Medical Center. I've trained, I did my audiology degree at Dalhousie University, but I also did my PhD with my esteemed mentor in tinnitus, so in ringing and buzzing in the ears. I have multiple publications in everything from infant hearing health to brain health and hearing loss. So that's me. And currently I lead a team of very talented team members. And I wanted to mention today that I trained all of them personally. So yes, they have education and experience from elsewhere, but I've hand selected them. Many people approach me from throughout the world to try to get a position where I mentor them. And the people that you will come into contact with at any of our clinics are those people who I have hand selected and mentored and trained. And what does that mean? It means we go above and beyond simply a hearing test and a pair of hearing aids if you think you have hearing loss. So we'll get more to that in a moment, but this is who we are, and you may recognize some of these faces if you are already our patients. Okay, so just kind of building on what we talked about last time. So if you didn't get a chance to join us live, I would highly recommend that you join the link that is available at the Unison Active Aging portion of their website, because it talks about hearing health in general. So there's a lot of good background information. It talks about you know, how common hearing loss is, what the signs and symptoms are, what you should do, and where you should go for help. So I do highly recommend that you take a listen to that. So I'm gonna, like I mentioned, kind of use that as a jumping off point and build on that. And I wanna let you know what happens, generally speaking, when you have hearing loss. So if we take a look at this picture, it represents how we hear sounds from the left-hand side of the graph to the right-hand side of the graph. It represents different notes or tones like you would hear from a piano keyboard, okay? From the top of the graph, if we can hear those tones well, when we do a hearing test, we would put a little dot. We would plot you at the top of the graph if you could hear those notes well. And if you can't hear them as well, we would put a little dot based on your test results a little bit farther down the graph, based on where you can finally hear those sounds. So what we can see in this picture, it's just a good estimation example of a hearing loss that is reflective of someone maybe 65, 70, 75 years old, or someone who has genetic hearing loss. Okay, so maybe at a young age, like myself, who has had hearing loss since I was about 40. But what it shows is there is high frequency hearing loss. So you see that those dots move down as we move towards the right-hand side of the graph, those white dots connected by the line. So that would be considered a mild amount of hearing loss. The graph shows those dots partially down towards the closer to the bottom at the right-hand side of the graph. And that means you would have trouble hearing those high frequencies of sound. Now, this graph is a beautiful picture because it explains exactly what people will notice if they have this kind of hearing loss, which is a very common kind of hearing loss, a high frequency hearing loss that we often see as we age, starting around age 50 and certainly continuing on to this degree around age 60, 65, 70, 75. What you'll notice is that you cannot hear as clearly or as correctly as you used to. You can't get all of the details of sound. And if you look at this picture, it shows us that the reasoning why is because when we have high frequency hearing loss, it's cutting out the consonant components of sound. And you may or may not know this, but the consonant components are very, very, very important for our brain to feel like we understand sounds and we get all of the detail of sound, not just the gist. Okay, so this graph, to me, it says it all. If we have some high frequency hearing loss, we're not hearing consonants correctly, we're going to feel like we can't hear as clearly. So just one quick note is if you know someone, and it may be yourself, who says, well, I can hear, it's just that sounds aren't clear. Well, I want you to understand that that tells us you probably have some hearing loss. The fact that you don't hear as clearly as you could or should is actually reflective of some underlying hearing loss. And I will tell you also that nearly half, about 40, I think it's just trying to see the graph there, 48% of Canadians over age 60 have difficulty hearing speech correctly. They have at least a mild hearing loss. This is from Canadian research, and it's about 10 years old now. And I bet you if we did the research study now, we would see even a higher incidence of that. Okay, so just remembering those signs and symptoms that we talked about at the last presentation, I did want to bring them up so that if you missed that presentation, you have some access to the basics here. So when we talk about signs and symptoms, if you want to determine if you should get your hearing thoroughly evaluated, you want to think of these signs and symptoms not just as, oh, you know, out of the blue, one time here, I've experienced this. No, instead, you want to think about these symptoms as something that you experience frequently, okay? And if you have 2 or more of these signs or symptoms and you experience them frequently, then you should seriously consider getting a thorough hearing evaluation. All right, so number 1, asking people to repeat. So if you have gotten into the habit of saying pardon or what repeatedly, frequently, that can be a sign or symptom of hearing loss. Turning up the TV or radio or any kind of speaker that you listen to louder than others frequently can be a sign of hearing loss. So if someone comes over to your house and they say, and they notice, so maybe your family members notice your TV is pretty loud and you know it seems normal to you, that might be a sign of hearing loss. Difficulty hearing people if they have their back turned. So if you think about the basics of acoustics, if we're not facing you, our voice isn't coming to you, nor do you have the visual input of what I'm saying if you can't see me. So that can also be a sign or symptom of hearing loss if you experience that and you notice that frequently. In background noise, if you have significantly more difficulty understanding what people say in background noise, that's actually the #1 reason why people come to us. And it's kind of like the canary in the coal mine. It's the first thing that people tend to notice or see if they have some hearing loss. So that one is very, very important. Okay, so if that is something you experience frequently, let's say you go to Starbucks with your friend or the Tim Hortons and you've noticed, oh, I really have a lot more difficulty in this kind of situation getting the specifics of the conversation, then that could be one of the symptoms of hearing loss that you should think about. Tinnitus. So tinnitus is ringing or buzzing or humming in our ears when there's no actual sounds outside. Tinnitus is a direct result of some underlying hearing loss in most cases. And I often call it the canary in the coal mine. If you've got some hearing damage at your ears, then they can't send as much information up to your brain, and your brain cells just try to spontaneously activate. It's like a muscle twitch if they're not getting the right stimulation. And so we will often perceive that ourselves as ringing or buzzing in our ears. Okay, so that can be a sign or symptom of hearing loss. If people are at a distance, so let's say that you were to come to my presentation, if I was doing this in person, and you would really feel like you had to sit at the front because at the back, it's just far too hard for you to get all of the details of what I'm saying, that could be a sign or symptom of hearing loss. And finally, like I mentioned, based on that picture that I showed you just a moment ago, if you feel like speech is less clear or unclear, or like people are muffled or always mumbling, that is most definitely a sign or symptom of hearing loss, because your ears aren't sending up the important little high frequency speech cues and consonants that give our brain the detail of sound to get the right word every single time. Okay, so that's just a refresher on the signs and symptoms of hearing loss. If you have 2 or more of those on a frequent basis, it really, I would highly recommend that you find yourself a reliable hearing clinic and you get a thorough hearing evaluation. All right, so the other thing to mention is if you are over age 60, based on the Canadian research, it would make sense to get a thorough hearing evaluation also, because we know from the statistics, almost half of Canadians have some hearing loss. And the other thing I'll mention, which I talked about in the last presentation, is fully 3/4 of those individuals in that large scale Canadian study, even though they had a mild hearing loss, they were unaware of it. Okay, why is that? It's because hearing loss is usually gradual. The little tiny structures in the ear, they're called hair cells, they wear down over time, and we just learn to adapt to it. We are very smart as humans. We figure things out. We look, we watch, we might turn our ear, we use our brain. We know that for sure. We actually overuse our brain to strain and to try to remember what has been said in the past to determine what might be said in that particular moment coming up. So we do all of these things, and that's why we aren't necessarily very aware of our own hearing loss. It's very common that it might be people around you, so your close friends or your family members, who actually notice your hearing loss first. So listen to them. If they are telling you, hey, I think you should get your hearing checked, listen to them, because we know from the research, 3/4 of you may not realize you have a hearing loss, and it might be other people that notice it first. Okay, so let's get to what we are here to talk about today, which is myths about hearing aids. And I was so excited to talk about this. I did a presentation in 2023 where I included a little bit about this, and people were fascinated with this topic. So when I worked with the Unison about a topic for a 3-series sessions on hearing health, I said, let's talk about the myths of hearing aids, because I think a lot of people need to get the truth, get the objective information so that they can make an informed, educated decision for themselves if they have hearing loss and might like to do something about it. So the first thing I would say is many people who don't have hearing aids often think and often say to me and often talk about the fact that they don't think hearing aids work, simply because they hear so many complaints from their friends and family and people that they have met who have hearing aids. So what do? They wait and they wait and they wait some more before they do anything at all about their hearing loss. And this is tragic. It is the worst possible thing that could happen. On average, we know from research, they wait about 7 to 10 years before they do anything, even if they recognize there's a little bit of hearing loss. And what's unfortunate is the research is clear. The longer we wait, the higher impact that the hearing loss has, not just on our social interactions and our ability to hear what we want to hear, but our ability to actually understand what we want to hear, and on our brain. After about 4.5 years, if we have untreated hearing loss, the research shows that affects how our brain is able to receive information and sounds. And there is the beginnings of auditory atrophy after about 4.5 years. So it's really unfortunate that these comments and myths and negative attitudes about hearing aids and complaints are out there, because it tends to affect people who could use our help and could use hearing aids to benefit them and enjoy a fulsome quality of life. So that's what we're here to bust. We're here to bust those myths today. Okay, so here is what many of these people will tell me. They've heard negative comments and complaints about hearing aids. They'll say, well, okay, I see that I have some hearing loss, but I don't really notice it that much. It doesn't seem like it's that bad. I can wait to do something about it. And so here's what I want to tell you. If you notice any hearing loss at all, you have probably had hearing loss for at least 5 years, maybe 10, maybe longer. Okay, let's go back to that research. After 4.5 years, the brain changes after hearing loss. We know that for certain. It was shown on what we call functional MRIs. Those cells shrink. Once that happens, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing anyone can do about it. There's nothing any device or technology can do about it. So it behooves us to identify our hearing loss as soon as possible and receive treatment as soon as possible. And like I mentioned, let's just reiterate, how can you tell? The easiest way for you yourself to tell if you might have hearing loss is when you perceive the feeling that you can hear, but not quite understand. Okay, so you've lost some of the clarity of words, and that's because you're not getting those high frequencies. Therefore, you're not getting all of the words correctly. And the other thing I should mention, if you have difficulty in background noise, that's another one that you may notice yourself. Okay, so with both of these factors, it's going to require extra effort of your brain to listen. Well, we know that the brain can do a lot, but it only has a certain amount of cognitive reserve. And that is important, that it uses that for many other important things like memory, like executive function, decision making, like vocabulary, all sorts of other important things that it's doing. And if we have to use extra energy, cognitive reserve of our brain to simply help us hear, what this shows in the research is it's linked with cognitive decline. So we're using too much energy to help us simply hear. So we have difficulty with many other cognitive areas. So this research, there's a lot of research out there. This is really a high level interpretation of it. And that's what I love to do. I love to read research and share it with the general public, share it with our patients, share it with our team members. But it all stands to reason that sooner is better when it comes to hearing loss and its effect on brain health. Okay, here's some more myths about hearing aids. So this is an interesting one. And the first one comes from the fact that I've done a lot of educational training in the community. So I will go out to seniors lodges and train their staff and let them know details about ears, hearing health, hearing aids. And one particular situation really highlighted to me how little general knowledge there is about hearing aids. So I was at a seniors residence and I was training staff, and they said, oh, well, this patient is having difficulty hearing me, but they have hearing aids. And I said, okay, that's great. They have hearing aids. They've obviously been tested, but when was the last time that those hearing aids were checked up? And they said, oh, I'm not sure that they've ever been checked. And I said, okay, well, when was the last time that they had their hearing checked? And they said, oh, probably when they got their hearing aids. And I said, well, when did they get their hearing aids? And they said, oh, about 7 or 8 or 9 years ago. And so what the misconception or the myth was for that staff member was that once you have hearing aids, you're done. It's set it and forget it. and nothing else needs to be done. Well, that is absolutely not true. So just like, I guess, let's say exercise, I would say we have to keep doing it to stay healthy. Okay, we can't go and get ready for a race and do our training and then do the race and then think, okay, now our heart health is and our cardiovascular system is set for life. That's not the case. We have to keep up that baseline exercise and activity. It's the same thing with our hearing. Our hearing is going to change, okay, over time. So we need to do checkups. We need to do a test. I recommend at least every 2 years. We should also check that the hearing devices, make sure that they're functioning. They don't last forever. They last about 5 years. They are very delicate electronics. So they are affected by dust. They are affected by moisture. They are affected by getting dropped, those types of things. They have about a 5-year cycle. That's why there is funding through the government, for example, every 5 years, because the government is aware that hearing aids last about 5 years. And even if the hearing aids might still have some function left after 5 years, if the hearing has changed dramatically, we might need to either update the settings in those hearing aids or look at getting more powerful hearing aids. So there's more to it than set it and forget it. So if you're working with a good quality professional hearing clinic, they're going to set up reoccurring appointments for you so that you can get checked and we can make sure that you're walking around with the right prescription in your hearing aids. The other thing to know is things change. Over time, as we age, we tend to accumulate more wax in our ears. So maybe when we first evaluate you, that's not a problem. But each time we evaluate you, we're going to take a look in your ears. And if we notice something has changed, we're going to educate you about that and say, hey, here's what you can do at home to take care of that problem, for example. Or maybe you never used to have tinnitus. And then, 3 years into your journey working with us, you mention at your evaluation that, oh, I have some tinnitus at nighttime. Well, we're going to talk to you, explain why that is, and give you some solutions and suggestions to help you manage that. So we're here to support you throughout your lifespan with your hearing journey. And that is just so important. You're going to have much, much better success if you choose a clinic to support you who operates in that fashion. Okay, another myth about hearing aids. This is a big one. And as I mentioned, I'm going to allude to the fact that people often wait 7 to 10 years. Sometimes they wait decades. I have patients who come in to me in their 90s. And for the very first time, and they've probably had hearing loss for 30 or 40 years or longer. Well, what we have to understand is the longer we wait, the harder it is for hearing aids to improve the hearing and fix the problems. Certainly, hearing aids aren't going to fix the problems immediately, period. Okay, it takes time to adapt and adjust to them. I like to use the analogy of physiotherapy. It takes time. We do our exercises. We retrain our muscles. It's the same with our ears. It takes time for our ears sending the messages to the brain to allow the brain to adapt to the way that things sound. So it takes time, up to 18 months. But understand that the longer that someone has waited, the less success that we can have, generally speaking, because remember, those brain cells, they're going to slow down and atrophy. So even if we have the very best hearing aids that on our ears, if our brain can no longer make sense of the sound and understand and recognize those sounds, it is much harder for us to help someone with hearing loss with hearing aids. Okay, myths about hearing aids continued here. My friend, my neighbor, my brother, my cousin, my car mechanic has the best hearing aids. So that fact that there's a best hearing aid out there is a complete myth. Okay, there is no one size fits all best hearing aid for anyone. The best hearing aid, this is so, so important. If you take nothing else away from this presentation, please remember this. The best hearing aid for you is the hearing aid that is properly recommended for you based on your hearing loss, based on your ear shape, size, wax production, based on your listening goals, whether you want to hear the birds out there when you're birding, or you want to hear the music when you're at home listening to your stereo, or you need and want to hear at your board meetings. The best hearing aid for you is related also to your hearing history, how long you've had that hearing loss, and your current speech understanding skills. So this is a complex ability for us to choose the best hearing aid for you. When you come into a hearing clinic like ours, we're going to assess not only the testing aspects of your hearing, we're going to be having a detailed conversation with you so we can understand what is actually going on and what the best hearing aid is for you. And I must mention to you that the best hearing aid for you may not just be a hearing aid at all. It actually could be a hearing aid with a special assistive microphone, or it could be a hearing aid with a special assistive TV device. And so we're going to talk more about that at the next active aging listening session. So please stay tuned for that. So it's so critically important that you work closely with a thorough hearing care clinic to find what's best for you. I have tons of patients who come into us and they will bring like a folder with information with, you know, documentation from their brother's hearing clinic about what their brother got. And that's helpful and that's useful. And I like to get an idea of, you know, some of the things that maybe that brother, for example, is enjoying about the hearing aids, and maybe some of the bells and whistles. But when it comes down to it, the best hearing aid for you is going to be based on solely on your hearing and your listening needs. And it's critical to work in depth with your hearing care professional to figure that out. Okay, another myth about hearing aids. I can't afford hearing aids. A lot of people come in reluctantly. They're worried about the expense, the investment in hearing aids. And so it is true. Hearing aids are a big investment, okay? They can be a big expense for people. Now, I want you to understand that there are funding sources available and out there. There are also certain programs that are out there. So depending on which clinic you work with, there are, you know, there might be access to different ones. I'll give you an example. We work closely with a nonprofit agency in Calgary and area, and they can help support people who might be on a lower income who need some help with funding hearing aids. Also, depending on your age, if you're over age 65, there are different programs and they are income-based. So we can help you apply for these different programs that are out there. There is something for everyone. I have never turned anyone away. We, you know, we turn over all the rocks and investigate all the sources of support. So please, 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 don't be concerned about, you know, getting improvement for your hearing simply because of your budget. If that's the biggest concern that's stopping you from coming in to see us, please let us know when you call, and there, you know, we will make sure that we have all of the accessible funding at our fingertips to talk to you about when you come in to see us. Okay, let's talk a little bit about hearing aids. Now, the details of hearing aids. There's tons of information out there. You know, now that you've signed up for this webinar, based on how artificial intelligence works, now that you start looking online, you're going to be fed a lot of information about hearing aids. Please be careful. Take all of that as advertising and take all of that with a grain of salt, okay? There's basics of hearing aids that I want you to know. And then when you're ready to do something, it makes sense to go and talk to a hearing care professional so that, like I mentioned, they can go through your test results. They can look at your ear. They can think about your listening needs to find what's best for you. Okay, but the basics, I think this is important. People are very unaware of the basics. So number one, style. So what I mean by that is the shape and the size of the device, what it looks like, how it sits in your ear or over your ear. So, and the other thing to know is how it looks really does not dictate the price at all. So hearing aids are computers, as I mentioned before. So the computer chip is actually deep inside the little device. So the device can look something like that, and we'll get to different shapes and styles, or it can be larger, something like that, or it can be small and fit right into your ear like a little jelly bean. But what it looks like doesn't dictate the price, because the computer circuit is the big part of the expense, and that's really what dictates the price. Okay, what are some basic different features? So the circuit, like I mentioned, that determines the power. So obviously, if we have a larger device, it has a room for a larger circuit, it can be more powerful. Whereas if we have something that's much smaller, then the circuit can't be quite as powerful. So we will make the recommendation based on how much hearing loss you have and how much power or emphasis or improvement and enhancement of sound you need. The other features that are important to be aware of are how do these devices get their power? So, smaller devices typically need batteries, okay? Some of the very large devices actually also still need batteries, but many of the devices now, fortunately, can be that we use can be rechargeable, so you don't have to worry about finicky small batteries. And as we get older, manipulating small things like batteries can be a concern. Or if you have pets at home or grandchildren around or kids around, young children, we don't want batteries around. It's not that necessarily that safe. Okay, so types of hearing aids. So the the original hearing aids really in our time frame was what we call the behind the ear hearing aid, and that's what I was showing you here. And it's in the top left picture. We generally connect it into the ear with an earpiece called an ear mold. So that was kind of the original style. They're very reliable, very, very powerful. We still use them with people who have significant hearing loss, like a profound hearing loss. We still use them with young children because they are so reliable and durable. What are the cons? Well, they do drain a lot of power. So in many cases, you have to still use batteries. Some of them are becoming rechargeable now. And they are, quite noticeable. For some people, that's very important. So that's the original hearing aid style, which we would call the behind the ear hearing aid style. So what are some of the newer ones? The over the ear, or what we call receiver in the canal. You've probably seen lots of, or if you haven't yet, you sure will after this presentation. You'll be fed lots of pictures like this, okay? So it's a device that is a little bit smaller than the original one, and then it has a little wire and a little tiny piece that goes into your ear. Lots of varieties of these in size and shape and the piece that sits in your ear. They are smaller than a original kind of hearing aid. They can be very advanced. So they do things like connect up to my phone. For example, I like to listen to music when I'm doing reports. And so I can just have my hearing aids on and I'll be listening to music. So they're very advanced. They're wireless. They are generally rechargeable. So I put my hearing aids in the charger at night, pop them out. They're ready to go in the morning. Other nice advantage is that they don't block what we call low frequencies. So if you are, newer to hearing loss, you might have pretty good hearing for certain sounds. So we don't want to block those up with that big ear mold piece from a old style original hearing aid or from the style that we're going to get to in a second. So because of that, they sound a little bit more natural. Now, if you have very short hair or no hair at all, they can be noticeable. Okay, so that's, for women or men who have like lots of hair by their ear, they aren't noticeable at all. And if you look at the top middle picture, all you might see is the wire, but you can definitely see the device from the back. So, a good thing, one thing that I really like to do is when I have patients come in and that we're talking about the hearing aid that we were just talking about, the receiver in the canal hearing aid, and they're interested, but they're not really sure what it will look like, I'll actually disinfect one, put it on, take some pictures and show it to them so that they can have a really good idea of how it's actually going to look. Okay, and here's the last style of hearing aid. So again, style is how it looks, not how it sounds. So an in-the-ear hearing aid, and these have been around for a long while as well. It really depends on the ear size and shape, though, as to whether we can get something like this that will fit into your ear with all the components. Some of them are now becoming rechargeable, which is good because they weren't in the past. They can be discreet, really depends on your ear. Some of them are actually invisible. So there's one special type that stays in your ear overnight, actually, and it's completely invisible. So if you were to look at the ear, you can't see it at all. So lots of different kinds in this department also of in-the-ear hearing aids. Depending on your hearing loss, they can sound a little bit echoey because they block up some of the low frequencies. They are certainly less durable because they're sitting in your ear where wax can be produced. So they are more impacted by wax and debris and moisture. Um, and oftentimes they aren't rechargeable yet. So again, as you can see, I went through a lot of different just simply styles of hearing aids. There are different styles of hearing aids, and we have to choose the right one for you based on your hearing loss and your ear size and shape and what you are looking to gain from it. So which hearing aid is best? It really depends on you. I don't believe there's any best hearing aid. I think there's, there's a top 5 for sure. But there's different ones of different styles. So I think there's great ones for behind the ear from certain manufacturers. I think there's great ones that go in the ear from actually different manufacturers. And different yet are the ones that I prefer that go over the ear. There are good quality manufacturers. They are the ones who are making these hearing aids, the ones that are research oriented and generally have an international warranty. Those are the ones that we work with. So we guide you through, we're going to look at your ear. We're going to suggest, okay, here's your hearing loss. This is your ear. Maybe we need to look at a behind the ear hearing aid. Let's talk about the options within that style of hearing aid. Definitely, we want to get, a good quality manufacturer with a good warranty. But honestly, more than that is your quality hearing care provider. So talk to your contacts, talk to your friends, and get their experience. Reach out to them, reach out to these clinics and see what the feeling is like that you get from that clinic. At our clinic, we pride ourselves on being a hearing care clinic, not a hearing aid store. We're independent. I'm the person who owns the clinic, so I'm always going to make the best audiological choice for you. And that's how my team members work as well. And what that means is we're going to find the best hearing solution for you. So I'm just going to give you a couple examples of what I mean. This is really digging down into the weeds, but it helps you have an understanding of how we do things. So discuss your hearing needs, and we will discuss your hearing findings with you. And then as an example, for someone who has normal low frequency hearing loss, just like that graph I showed you. So many, many, many people who are age 66 and have a mild high frequency hearing loss, this would be you. So in example 1, if you went somewhere and you said, well, I'm concerned about how it looks, and I really like those hearing aids that go into the ear. Well, I will tell you that the best hearing aid for you would not be something that goes into the ear because it blocks the low frequencies and would cause you to feel very blocked, and the sounds would be very echoey to you. So that's an example of where we're going to make suggestions on what's best for you, but we're going to give you the education so you understand why. Okay, so that's critical too. Example number 2, if you have a severe hearing loss, but you're interested in maybe an over-the-ear receiver in the canal kind of hearing loss, well, in the last couple of years, the good news is that although in the past you probably would have had to have something like this with a big ear mold that goes into your ear, nowadays we can make a custom piece to add on to this. And so there's an example of the best hearing aid for you because it's a little bit smaller and it is rechargeable, and maybe you like the looks of it better, so you're going to wear it. We can make some adjustments to this instead of the older style device, and that will work best for you so that you're happy wearing it. Just some basic hearing aid updates. Again, best needs to be tailored to you. I think some of the really good updates that I wanted to share are rechargeable hearing aids. So like I mentioned before, there's lots of different charging options, but it's so nice because we don't have to worry about dexterity as much. So, particularly as we grow older and our dexterity might not be as good or our vision might not be as good, all we have to do to charge our hearing aids is pop them into the case. Okay, we don't have to fiddle around with batteries. So I think that's a huge advancement in our field. And it's becoming more and more common in all the styles of hearing aids. Hearing aids are Bluetooth compatible. What does that mean? It means hearing aids can be fun. So we can listen to music from our phones and it comes right into our ears, or we can play a game on our iPad or do a watch a movie on our iPad, and the sound comes right into our ears, so it's not disrupting anyone in a waiting room or even at home. Waterproof hearing aids. So that's a huge advancement. Even just the water resistance of regular hearing aids now has improved greatly. So that's wonderful. So it's one less thing we have to concern ourselves with if you have a very active lifestyle. And there's just a ton of options. Don't get lost in the weeds. Find someone you trust, and they will guide you through the different options and try to simplify it for you so you get what works for you. It's also going to be based on your budget too. So, you know, hearing aids can have a ton of bells and whistles, and obviously the price is related accordingly. What's important is that you get something with good sound quality that's going to work well for you. Okay, just a couple other things. We're going to get more into this at the next presentation. So what are some things that work with hearing aids to make the best use of hearing aids? So as I mentioned, if you've had hearing loss a long time, so it has become noticeable that it's harder for you to understand what you hear, then hearing aids may not be enough. Hearing aids might help you hear the general parts of sound, but if you go to a restaurant or a coffee shop or, you know, or in a car, you might need some assistance to make even better use of the hearing aids. And we will talk about this more, but there are microphones that can help you. There's actually homework that you can do to get your brain making better use of the sounds that the hearing aids are giving you. There's also some apps you can use on your phone to help when you walk around and you go to the grocery store and you're having difficulty. Maybe the person is a soft-spoken person. You can hold your phone out to them and then their voice gets translated to text. So we're going to talk more about that at the next presentation. But just so you know, the hearing clinic that you work with should be thinking of your hearing care holistically, not just about a pair of hearing aids. They should be the kind of place that knows about these different accessories and knows about these different opportunities for you to make the best use of your hearing that you have and the hearing aids that you have. And I'll just add one last thing to that, which is education, educating you and your family members about how to communicate better. So there are some small tips and techniques that they can do so that you can hear them better when you're wearing your hearing aids. So we'll get into that at the next presentation. Okay, just a couple truths about hearing aids now, because these are equally important. I wanted to bust some of the myths of hearing aids, but I also want you to understand that there are things that you need to know about hearing aids. They do require some care and maintenance, not a lot. We go through the basics with you. We educate you about that when you receive your hearing aids from us. That's important. If you have rechargeable hearing aids, that charge will last about 1 day, so you do need to charge them every night. If you have battery operated hearing aids, it depends on how much hearing loss you have. So your hearing care professional will give you the guidelines of how often you should be changing your batteries. You should definitely have a checkup of your hearing and your hearing aids at least every 2 years. Your ears change just like your eyes. Okay, so we wouldn't want to be walking around with the wrong prescription in our glasses, nor do we want to be walking around with the wrong prescription in our hearing aids. We want to make sure you're getting the most benefit from the hearing aids that you invested in. So you should be walking around with the right prescription. So just a reminder that the truth is there are lots of options to hearing aids, some of which make it easier for you. Maybe rechargeable hearing aids will make it easier for you to take care of them. Those options I alluded to for, coffee shops or the car or TV, though, ask your hearing care professional about those if you're still having challenges with your hearing aids. It's not unusual. You are not alone if you still find some challenges with your hearing. Hearing aids are not magic. They're not going to, make us have the hearing or the listening skills that we had when we're 20. So sometimes we have to rely a little bit more on support devices, support information, and education. And also, it's important to know that you should be wearing your hearing aids all the time during your waking hours. We have a lot of patients who come to us and they ask for their support. They say, I got these hearing aids somewhere else. I'm not doing that well. You know, can you give me some support? Well, the first question I ask is, are you wearing your hearing aids every day, all day, at least 12 hours a day? The answer is almost always no. The second question I ask is, have you worn your hearing aids for 3 months at any period of time for 3 months or more, all day, every day? And the answer is usually no. So that lets you know that there is an adaptation period to hearing aids. And the more that you are immersed in the situation of listening with and through your hearing aids, the better that you're going to do. So if you cannot wear your hearing aids every day, all day, you need to consult with a hearing care professional so they can help sort out why. Okay, there's a lot of reasons why. It could be something as simple as you don't feel comfortable, you're worried you're going to lose them when you go golfing, or maybe your ears are itchy. Well, we have lots of easy solutions to help with those things. And our patients should be wearing their hearing aids every day, all day. If they aren't, I want them to reach out to us so we can get them back on track. Hearing aids are only one part of your hearing care. That's probably the biggest truth of all. Education, like I mentioned, teaching people how to insert them so they feel confident, giving you a little bit of homework, a little bit of listening training homework at home to help make the most of your hearing aids, teaching your family and friends how to better get their voice to your ears, supporting you with information about how to handle earwax or what to do if you have tinnitus, recommending accessories to make even better use out of hearing aids you already have. So these are the types of things to look for in order to get that best hearing care that you really deserve in a well-respected hearing clinic. I always say to people, you get to choose your healthcare. Well, it's very true in hearing care. You get to choose. So choose wisely, choose carefully. And I generally would give you the recommendation that an independent clinic usually will provide this kind of, very detailed, thorough follow-up care versus a hearing aid store. And finally, the last truth I'll share is that hearing aids can be really fun. And that's what I love about what we do. We get people so comfortable with their hearing aids and their listening systems and their accessories and devices that they love their hearing aids. They want to use them. They use their iPads. They use their phones. I stream yoga through my hearing aids so that when I'm doing yoga, it doesn't interrupt my family when they're doing things. So it's fun. It can be fun, and why not? Let's enjoy this, and let's remember why we're doing this is to help us hear our worlds better and have a fulsome quality of life. So just the last couple of things to let you know for good auditory health in general is that we want you to make sure you keep those listening skills up even if you're at home alone. So whether you have hearing aids or not, okay, listen to different sounds, listen to radio, listen to movies. And you notice I say listen to movies. Don't just watch movies. Make sure you're doing listening skills too. If you have hearing aids, wear them consistently. Remember, adaptation can take up to 18 months. Consistency is key, just like learning a language. Being immersed in it is important. And get them checked up and updated as needed. And then just the final screen is who we are. So if you're looking for hearing care help, you or someone that you care about, like I say, choose wisely. We ourselves are an independently owned clinic. We've done lots of partnerships in the community with nonprofits like the Unison, like Deaf and Hear Alberta. I was on their board of directors for 11 years. I believe in helping everyone who has hearing loss and providing resources and education. We're partners in the community with Silvera for seniors, so we go to their seniors lodges. We actually provide mobile care to anyone. So if you need our help and you can't get to us, give us a call. We can arrange something for you. And very proudly, our entire team is award winning. So most recently, we won an award from the Alberta province for supporting seniors from the Minister of Seniors and Housing. And we won an award also for the Alberta Business of the Year for mentorship. So as I mentioned, we do a lot of education and training to our team members. So you can feel confident that anyone you see is going to share this kind of level of information with you because I mentor them. It's very important to me. So those are just a few exciting recent awards. Please take a look at our website. I do pride myself on keeping it very up to date with research and education. And on that website, there's links there to sign up for our newsletter. I send one out about once or twice a month. It's really educational based. So if you're interested in the latest research on hearing or on noise protection or anything to do with tips and tricks for hearing, brain health related to hearing, hearing aids, hearing assistive devices, please sign up. And of course, we have social media too. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. So thank you so much for your attention. And I look forward to doing our next presentation, which will be talking about what can assist you in addition to hearing aids, going beyond hearing aids.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Scarf. So we do have a couple of questions here for you.
Great.
It says, can you learn a new language with a hearing loss using hearing aids?
That is a fantastic question. I have at least 3 or 4 patients who their main goal, and we got to this, like we always come up with people's like top 2 or 3 listening goals with their hearing aids. And in this handful of patients, I was so excited because their main goal was that they wanted to learn a new language. They were learning either French or Spanish or you name it. But one of them was having a lot of difficulty with the accent, learning the accent, because when we have hearing loss, it's much harder to get all the details of a language. A language has a different rhythm of speech. And if we have hearing loss, we're missing some of the components of the frequencies of sound. And then if the rhythm is different, it makes it really, really difficult. So his main goal was to be able to hear and try to get the accent better. And he's doing much, much better now that he has his hearing aids. I have another patient who is traveling to, I think it was Costa Rica with his hearing aids, and he's really getting immersed in the language. So yes, the answer is a resounding yes. If you're trying to learn another language and you have hearing loss, first I want to let you know it's very hard. If you leave your hearing loss untreated, it's going to be harder for you than some of the other students. You will notice that. And again, it pertains to the fact that you're missing some of the frequency cues and the rhythm is different. So if we can improve the frequency cues so that you get all of the sounds, at least you have a chance of following that rhythm. So yes, that's a really exciting question. And I will mention that it's good for your brain to learn new things also. One of my areas of interest and study is in brain health and brain research. And we know that learning new things is very important to keep our brain flexible and healthy.
All right, we have another one. It says, does tinnitus increase despite hearing aids?
Oh, that's a great question. So absolutely not. So if you have tinnitus, you're going to have tinnitus, the underlying tinnitus, no matter what, no matter if you wear hearing aids or don't wear hearing aids. So we're not physically changing the brain. But when you are wearing those hearing aids, in about 80 to 90% of people, you will not perceive your tinnitus as much. I myself experienced that. So I have mild tinnitus, it comes and goes. And if on a weekend I haven't popped in my hearing aids yet in the morning, I will notice my tinnitus and I'll say, oh, I have to go get my hearing aids because it distracts my brain from the tinnitus by linking me into the real sounds that are around me in my environment. But by wearing hearing aids, we're not going to worsen the tinnitus. By not wearing hearing aids, we're not going to change the tinnitus. But what we can do is we can change how much we perceive the tinnitus when we're wearing our hearing aids. I had one more thing I wanted to say about that. Yes, the most important thing about tinnitus is that you're not exposed to loud noise. It seems that if you already have, I should mention, it can be pronounced tinnitus or tinnitus. So if you have tinnitus or tinnitus and already you are a little bit more sensitive to increasing that tinnitus from loud noise exposure. So please, please, please protect your ears if you have tinnitus.
All right. Um, what is the future for hearing aids?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I actually know what the future holds. I don't have a crystal ball, but I follow research and I travel and I go to research labs. So one of the really exciting things is visual input um, of speech and lip movements being analyzed by um, a video recorder on glasses or some sort of device that we wear and being sent into our hearing aids. So
Oh,
what I mean by that is if I was watching you speaking, Heather, my hearing aid could actually know by how my pupil is reacting and by how my eye is moving that I'm watching you versus watching something else. And then depending on what I'm looking at, my hearing aid could zoom and make different adjustments to help me hear more clearly what I'm interested in, and how it knows what I'm interested in is what I'm looking at. So that
that is
is
awesome.
research coming down the pipe
That's
as
fun.
we speak. Yes, very exciting. But of course, there has to be some sort of way to get that visual information into the hearing aid. So we're thinking, maybe glasses, maybe, but there's other ways too. Could be like in the past we had a little I've been around this industry a long time, so I've seen a lot of different things. They had like little arrays, like little pins that you would wear, and then that could have the video recorder sending the information. So that is coming down the pipe. Um, that's all I know for now, but that's pretty exciting.
That is exciting. We have one person asking about prices for hearing aids comparable to others at your location.
Oh, yes. So that's a great question because it really depends on the hearing aid. But we have hearing aids that are very basic. We have hearing aids that are very advanced. We are absolutely in line with other clinics. In fact, I know for a fact some of our more advanced ones are more reasonable than several other clinics. But again, I mentioned, if you're on a strict budget, there might be some financial support programs whereby we can provide you with the most advanced hearing aids um, with help from different financial programs. So we always want to get the very best quality sound,
Hmm.
regardless of the price point. And that also kind of speaks to like if we have really good experience with adjusting and working with hearing aids and teaching you how to use them, we can make the most of whatever works for your budget.
All right. Any recommendations for wearing over-the-ear hearing aids when exercising or running, and protecting the aids from moisture and sweat?
Okay, so that's a great question. So I'll tell you two things. Number one, if your hearing aids are from the last 3 to 4 years, um, they should function 100% normally if you're a runner. If they aren't, then there could be a problem with the circuitry and and to keep the hearing aids that you already have lasting longer, you might want to use a dry aid kit. So that's where you put the hearing aids in a special little device at nighttime that absorbs any moisture. But I'll tell you, hearing aids from the last 3 to 4 years, you should be able to run, work out, I mean, heavy sweating, spin class, you name it, and they shouldn't be affected at all. Um, so it might be, you know, if you've had hearing aids for a little while, you may need to use a dry aid kit, or you may want to look at some hearing aids that are, more up to date, that are very water resistant, or if you're just really concerned and you're around a lot of water, around a lot of water, you could look at waterproof hearing aids too.
Okay, so you covered a few of these, but what are some of the common challenges that people face when they start learning how to wear their hearing aids?
That's a great question. So number one, because this is reflective of the graph I first showed everyone, where the most common type of hearing loss is where we miss some of the high frequencies. So of course, the hearing aids are designed to enhance those high frequencies so that you get the speech cues and so that people's voices sound nice and clear. Now, when you're first hearing those sounds after you haven't heard them for maybe a number of years or maybe a few decades or more, those sounds can seem quite artificial, a little bit tinny, a little bit sharp. But the more that you wear the hearing aids, and especially if you do a little bit of, listening exercises that we recommend, You're going to adapt to those sounds quite quickly. So having the education and the support to know, okay, this is temporary and every day it's going to get better, that's important. That can really help you get past that period of time. That's probably maybe the number one challenge. Maybe number two might be just insertion. And so we take a great deal of time with people to make sure that they learn how to insert the hearing aids well. So I actually do a lot of fitness and yoga type classes where I have my head down and I'm moving all around and my hearing aids don't move at all. And after we teach you to insert yours won't be moving around at all either. But just giving you that confidence so that you wear them all the time, because a lot of people might think, okay, I'm going golfing or I'm going hiking and I'm worried about losing them. But if you have them inserted correctly, they won't budge. They won't move out of place.
All right. And can wearing hearing aids prevent further deterioration of hearing loss?
So there's a two-part answer to that question. So hearing aids are not going to affect the mechanical structures in the ear, the hair cells. Those hair cells are going to be working just like they were before, just like they will after. They're going to keep wearing down over time. Think about the tread on your tires. The more you drive, the more they wear down. So the hearing aids don't do anything. They don't make those hair cells wear out faster. They don't slow down the wear and tear, but that's okay. What they do is preserve the integrity of the relationship between the hair cells that you do have and the auditory nerve and the brain. That we know for sure. And that's the more important part, because once those parts start to deteriorate, we can't do anything about it. Okay, so and that's what comes down, when we're talking about understanding sound, and I keep talking about how the brain is related and the earlier you do something, the better. So how it goes, just to reiterate, is the hair cells wear down, okay? And then they're not sending as much information through the listening nerve, the auditory nerve, and the listening parts of the brain. So if that happens for a long period of time, the listening nerve and the listening part of the brain, they slow down and atrophy and the connections don't work as well. So then if we put a hearing aid on, they can't understand or make sense of those sounds. So, but the research shows that if we provide the right sound to the ears, even if the ears have hearing loss, we can preserve the integrity of how the nerve and the brain makes use of that sound so that you can still understand everything well as you age. So what happens is if we leave the hearing loss for a long period of time and then someone comes in and has these expectations where they want to hear things better, the hearing aids will help them, but not nearly as much as they would have been able to help them if we do something sooner, because the brain has already changed. And once the brain changes, there's nothing we can do.
Okay, that was the last question. Is there anything else that you want to add?
I would just say thank you so much for those questions. Those were excellent questions. It sounds like you are a very well-educated, interested group of people. So please sign up for our newsletter, because these are the kinds of things that I like to share. And so you'd probably get some benefit.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to
You're
connect with
welcome.